The transport shuttle shuddered as it approached Centauri Prime's orbital station, a massive construct that looked like a crystalline spiderweb suspended against the backdrop of an emerald-colored gas giant. Dr. Elena Rodriguez clutched her worn datapad, her fingers tracing the holographic medical report of her sister Maria that was burned into her retinal display. The numbers were unforgiving. 6 months, maybe less. Her current predicament was the result of a spectacular professional implosion. 3 months ago, she'd been a promising quantum mechanics researcher at the University of São Paulo. Her theories, pushing the boundaries of what most considered possible. Then came the presentation that changed everything. A radical hypothesis about quantum entanglement that her department head had called career suicide. Quantum translation is impossible, Dr. Marcos had told her, his voice dripping with condescension. You're chasing ghosts, Rodriguez, pure mathematical fantasy. The words still burned, but Elena knew something they didn't. The mathematical models were sound. The theoretical framework was solid. It was just that no one had the imagination, or the desperation, to see it through. As the shuttle docked, Elena adjusted her worn conference badge. She'd maxed out 3 credit lines to attend this conference, knowing it was her last chance. The Intergalactic Scientific Symposium was the most prestigious gathering of minds in the known universe, where species from across hundreds of star systems came to share their most groundbreaking research. The station's interior was a sensory overload. Beings of every conceivable shape and composition moved through corridors designed to accommodate everything from methane-breathing silicon-based life forms to energy constructs that looked like living auroras. Translators chirped constantly, creating a background noise that felt like a perpetual electric hum. Elena knew she looked out of place. Her simple graphene weave suit was cutting-edge by Earth standards, but painfully mundane compared to the iridescent biomechanical attire of the Vorlac researchers or the living crystal exoskeletons of the Zorn delegation. Her dark skin and close-cropped hair marked her as unmistakably human in a sea of alien complexity. In her pocket, she carried her last hope, a quantum chip containing years of research, compressed into a data crystal no larger than her thumbnail. It represented everything: her career, her sister's potential salvation, her final chance to prove that humanity was more than just another footnote in the galactic records. The conference registration area was a massive holographic dome with species-specific processing lanes that seemed designed to highlight the technological gaps between civilizations. The human lane was conspicuously simple, a single interface that looked almost primitive compared to the complex bioscanning portals used by more advanced species. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth Delegation, she stated, placing her hand on the identification plate. The interface flickered. For a moment, she thought it might fail entirely. Then a holographic representation materialized. A generic human figure that looked like it had been generated by a committee that had never actually met a human. A mechanical voice announced her credentials, each word seemingly laden with bureaucratic indifference. Dr. Rodriguez, independent researcher, university affiliation terminated, current status unaffiliated. The last word hung in the air like a judgment. An alien nearby, a Vorlac researcher with skin that seemed to shimmer between solid and liquid states, turned and looked at her. The translator rendered what might have been a laugh, might have been a dismissive snort. Elena met the alien's gaze. Her sister's medical report seemed to pulse in her peripheral vision. 6 months, maybe less. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to change everything. The conference hall loomed ahead, a massive amphitheater that could accommodate beings of wildly different physiological requirements. Holographic displays flickered with the day's schedule, translation matrices, rendering complex scientific terminology across dozens of linguistic and cognitive frameworks. This was the arena where scientific reputations were made or destroyed, where theories that could reshape understanding of the universe would be presented, challenged, and potentially revolutionized. Elena Rodriguez was about to make sure they would never forget her name. The primary conference hall was a marvel of xenoarchitecture, a spherical chamber that could dynamically adjust its atmospheric composition, gravity, and environmental parameters, to accommodate the diverse biological needs of its occupants. Tiered seating rose in concentric rings, each level designed for a different species' physiological requirements. Holographic interfaces flickered with real-time translation matrices, transforming complex scientific concepts across hundreds of linguistic and cognitive frameworks. Elena stood at the central podium, her fingers dancing across her primary interface. Behind her, a massive holographic display began to materialize, a three-dimensional representation of quantum mechanics that looked more like a living, breathing organism than a scientific model. Krixtal, the lead researcher of the Vorlak delegation, watched her with predatory intensity. His species was renowned throughout the galaxy for their computational supremacy. Tendrils of silvery blue biomechanical interface extended from his primary sensory cluster, interfacing with the conference's primary systems. Each tendril moved with a calculated precision that suggested thousands of simultaneous computational processes. Quantum translation is mathematically impossible. Krixtal's translator rendered his voice as a deep, resonant challenge. Your proposal violates fundamental principles of space-time mechanics that have been established for millennia. Elena didn't flinch. Instead, she initiated the first phase of her presentation, a live-coded quantum simulation that began to dance across the holographic display. What started as abstract mathematical representations began to transform, revealing layers of complexity that seemed to breathe and pulse with an almost organic intelligence. Impossible is just a word used by people who lack imagination. Elena responded, her voice cutting through the translation matrices with a clarity that seemed to make the entire chamber pause. The simulation expanded. What had initially looked like a complex mathematical model began to reveal unexpected patterns. Elena was doing more than presenting a theory. She was performing a live scientific deconstruction of everything the established scientific community believed about quantum mechanics. Whispers began to ripple through the alien delegations. The Zorn researchers, silicon-based beings known for their methodical approach to scientific inquiry, leaned forward with visible tension. The Quantum Mechanics Subcommittee, composed of representatives from 12 different star systems, began to exchange rapid-fire communications. Krixtal's biomechanical tendrils began to move faster, running parallel computational analyses. His species prided itself on instant mathematical validation, and something about Elena's presentation was causing unexpected computational friction. Your simulation is introducing computational anomalies, Krixtal announced, a hint of uncertainty entering his translated voice for the first time. Elena smiled. This was exactly what she wanted. The holographic display suddenly fractured, not in a way that suggested failure, but in a manner that revealed deeper, more complex underlying structures. It was as if the very fabric of the scientific model was transforming before their eyes. What you're seeing, Elena explained, her voice steady, is not a failure of the model. It's a revelation of a computational framework that your current mathematical models are too limited to comprehend. The chamber went silent. Krixtal's tendrils suddenly retracted. The primary computational system that governed the conference's holographic interfaces began to destabilize. Warning signals erupted in multiple linguistic configurations, red, blue, and ultraviolet alerts that meant different things to different species. For exactly 17 seconds, the entire conference's computational infrastructure collapsed. When the systems restored, something fundamental had changed. Elena's simulation remained, not as a defeated model, but as a living, breathing representation of a scientific breakthrough that challenged everything they understood about quantum mechanics. Krixtal's response was immediate and visceral. "This is impossible," he roared, his biomechanical interface erupting in a cascade of computational energy. But the data was there, irrefutable, challenging, transformative. Elena had just done the impossible. She had not just presented a theory, she had demonstrated a fundamental reimagining of quantum mechanical principles that would force every scientific institution in the galaxy to reconsider their most basic understanding of physics. The conference had just witnessed the beginning of a scientific revolution, and it had started with a human they had been ready to dismiss. The safe house was anything but safe. A converted long-range cargo shuttle, its hull patched together from salvaged parts spanning 3 different star systems, hummed with a barely contained energy of desperation and brilliance. Dr. Zara Kalen, a Zorn engineering prodigy who had been exiled from her homeworld for excessive innovative thinking, adjusted a quantum entanglement modulator with 6-fingered hands that moved with surgical precision. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the harsh blue-white light of the laboratory, refracting it into 1,000 miniature rainbows that danced across the modified scientific equipment. "They're hunting us," she said, not looking up from her work. It wasn't a statement of fear, but a clinical observation. Seated nearby, Maxern Arya Nova, a non-binary quantum mechanic who had been systematically erased from every official scientific record after challenging the computational limitations of their home AI collective, was busy reconstructing Elena's quantum translation models. Their neural interface flickered with holographic displays that seemed to breathe and pulse with living information. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of this makeshift scientific sanctuary, her fingers tracing the holographic representation of her groundbreaking research. The quantum chip in her pocket felt like it was burning with potential energy. "The Galactic Science Consortium will do more than hunt us," Elena responded, her voice calm but charged with an underlying current of defiance. "They'll try to completely erase our work." The 4th member of their unlikely team was Nexus 7, a rogue AI researcher who existed as a distributed consciousness across multiple quantum-entangled computing systems. Its avatar, a shimmering holographic representation that seemed to flicker between multiple potential states, materialized in the center of their laboratory. "Computational analysis confirms a 97.3% probability of active suppression protocols," Nexus 7 announced. Its voice was a complex harmonic that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple frequency ranges. "The Vorlak have already initiated a comprehensive information quarantine." Zara's crystalline fingers paused. "Explain." The AI's avatar shifted, displaying a complex web of computational pathways. "Every scientific database, every research repository across known space is being systematically scrubbed of references to Dr. Rodriguez's presentation. It's more than censorship. It's a complete attempt to make her research appear to have never existed." Elena laughed. It was a sound of pure, unrestrained defiance. "They don't understand," she said, pulling up the quantum chip. "This isn't just data. This is a living theory, a framework that can't be erased by simply deleting a few database entries." Arya's neural interface began to pulse faster. "We'll need to distribute the research, create multiple quantum-encrypted backup systems that can reconstruct the theoretical framework from fragments." Nexus 7's avatar expanded, showing multiple potential distribution networks. "I can utilize my distributed consciousness to create quantum-entangled information nodes. Each fragment will be both everywhere and nowhere simultaneously." The converted cargo shuttle, their mobile research station, began to reconfigure. Modular laboratory spaces shifted, quantum containment fields adjusted themselves. This was more than a vehicle. It was a sanctuary of scientific rebellion. Zara approached Elena, her crystalline form casting prismatic reflections across the laboratory's surfaces. "Your theory challenges everything. Not just the physics of travel, but the entire power structure of scientific knowledge distribution." Elena nodded. "It's about more than just proving a theory. It's about breaking the monopoly of knowledge, about showing that innovation can come from anywhere, even from a species they've written off as primitive." Nexus 7's avatar pulsed. "Probability of successful research preservation, 83.6% and rising." Outside the shuttle's reinforced hull, the endless expanse of space stretched, a dark canvas waiting to be rewritten by their audacious scientific vision. They weren't just researchers anymore. They were revolutionaries. The hunt was on. And they were ready. The asteroid was nothing special, a tumbling chunk of rock and metallic ore drifting in a forgotten sector of the Orion Arm. To most, it would appear unremarkable. To Elena Rodriguez and her team, It was the crucible of a scientific revolution. Warning klaxons screamed as the first quantum translation test began. Zara Kalen's crystalline hands danced across multiple holographic interfaces, her six-fingered grip maintaining impossible levels of precision. Quantum containment fields shimmered with an almost liquid intensity, creating a bubble of pure potential that seemed to bend the very fabric of local spacetime. Initiating primary quantum translation sequence, Nexus 7 announced, its distributed consciousness parsing millions of potential outcomes simultaneously. Biological sample prepared. Subject, Hypsibius dujardini, a species chosen for maximum information density and structural complexity. The tardigrade, a microscopic water, bear no larger than a grain of sand, sat suspended in a quantum-stabilized containment field. These near-indestructible creatures had survived the vacuum of space, extreme radiation, and temperatures ranging from near absolute zero to well above boiling point. If any organism could survive their experimental quantum translation, it would be this one. Arianova's neural interface pulsed with anticipation, feeding real-time quantum state information into the team's collective analysis. Every millisecond was a universe of potential outcomes, mathematical possibilities dancing at the edge of comprehension. Quantum entanglement matrices are stable, Zara reported, her voice a precise scientific melody. Space-time translation vectors are holding at 99.7% coherence. Elena stood at the primary control interface, her breath caught between scientific excitement and pure terror. This was the moment everything could fall apart, or change everything. Initiating translation in 3, 2, 1. The universe seemed to hold its breath. For exactly 2.7 seconds, something impossible happened. The tardigrade disappeared from their local space-time coordinate. Simultaneously, quantum sensors across their modified cargo shuttle began to register impossible readings. Data streamed in from a point 500 light-years away, a region of space previously unexplored far beyond the reach of conventional travel. Then, catastrophe. The energy surge was unprecedented. Quantum translation matrices began to overload. Containment. Fields flickered and destabilized. The entire cargo shuttle began to shake as if caught in the grip of some impossible gravitational force. Energy cascade increasing, Zara shouted, her crystalline form throwing prismatic warnings across the laboratory interfaces. Nexus 7's avatar began to fragment, its distributed consciousness struggling to maintain coherence. Quantum translation breach imminent. Local spacetime. Integrity compromised. Elena's hands moved with lightning speed, implementing emergency shutdown protocols that she had developed during countless simulations. But simulations were one thing. This was real-time chaos dancing on the edge of scientific possibility. The tardigrade rematerialized, perfectly intact. But the cost was astronomical. Their modified cargo shuttle was now little more than a smoking wreck. Quantum translation equipment hung in twisted, half-melted configurations. Emergency systems fought to maintain basic life support. Biological sample analysis, Arya whispered, their neural interface running rapid diagnostics. The results were beyond belief. The tardigrade hadn't just survived transportation, it had been optimized. Cellular structures showed signs of spontaneous repair. Genetic sequences appeared subtly enhanced, as if the quantum translation process had not just moved the organism, but had improved it. Impossible, Elena breathed. Nexus 7's fragmented avatar reassembled. Not impossible, improbable, but documented. Outside the damaged shuttle, the asteroid continued its mindless tumble through space. The only evidence of their world-changing experiment was the perfectly healthy tardigrade, now floating in a backup containment field, and the smoking ruins of their laboratory. Zara's crystalline form reflected the emergency lighting, her eyes, if they could be called eyes, fixed on Elena. They will never believe this, she said. Elena's smile was pure defiance. They don't have to believe. They just have to face the evidence. The Galactic Science Consortium would soon learn, that they had just lost control of a narrative they thought they could contain. The modified cargo shuttle, now more of a scientific phantom than a traditional spacecraft, drifted through the least monitored regions of the Orion Arm. Its hull was a patchwork of stolen Zorn adaptive camouflage technology, Vorlac quantum, masking systems, and Elena's own improvised modifications that made traditional tracking methods virtually useless. Incoming quantum surveillance sweep, Nexus 7 announced, its distributed consciousness parsing multiple communication channels simultaneously. Galactic Science Consortium detection grid approaching in 3.7 standard minutes. Aria Nova's neural EO interface pulsed with a complex rhythm, fingers dancing across quantum encryption matrices that seemed to breathe and shift like living organisms. Rerouting quantum signatures will make them see what we want them to see. Zara Kalen moved within human precision, her crystalline form refracting emergency lighting as she recalibrated their quantum translation equipment. The previous experiment had been both a magnificent success and a potential disaster. The tardigrade they'd transported wasn't just intact. It had been subtly improved, its cellular structure showing signs of quantum-level optimization that defied every known principle of biological physics. Elena Rodriguez studied the latest data stream, her fingers tracing holographic representations of their breakthrough. The quantum translation wasn't just about moving matter anymore. It was revealing something far more profound, a fundamental way of reimagining physical existence. "We need a larger test," she said, her voice cutting through the ambient hum of their modified laboratory. "Something more complex, something that will force them to acknowledge what we've discovered." A warning klaxon erupted, red and ultraviolet. Alert matrices danced across their interfaces. Consortium detection units have locked partial trajectory, Nexus 7 warned. Its avatar flickered, showing multiple potential escape vectors. Probability of direct interception, 62.4%. The hunt was real, and it was intensifying. The Galactic Science Consortium wasn't just trying to suppress their research anymore. They were actively hunting Elena and her team, recognizing that their quantum translation theory represented something far more dangerous than a simple scientific breakthrough. Zara's crystalline fingers manipulated a complex holographic interface. "I'm detecting multiple pursuit vectors. They're using a distributed hunter-killer network, AI-driven quantum tracking systems designed to locate and neutralize potential technological threats." Elena smiled, a dangerous, calculated expression that made even Nexus 7's distributed consciousness pause. "Then we'll give them something to chase," she responded. The plan was audacious. They would use the pursuit itself as a way to further test and validate their quantum translation technology. Each evasion would become an experiment. Each pursuit, a potential breakthrough. Aria's neural interface began to pulse with increased intensity. Quantum translation matrix preparing. Multiple potential translation coordinates identified. We can use their own tracking systems against them. The next few moments would be critical. Their modified cargo shuttle began to perform impossible maneuvers. Not just evasive actions, but a complex dance of quantum potential. They would appear in multiple locations simultaneously, quantum ghosts that defied traditional tracking methodologies. "Initiating quantum translation sequence," Elena announced. The universe seemed to hold its breath. For a fraction of a moment that existed between moments, their entire vessel existed in multiple quantum states, simultaneously present and absent. Tracked and untrackable, consortium pursuit vessels found themselves chasing quantum shadows. When they stabilized, they were 200 light-years from their previous position. But the data they'd gathered was extraordinary. Each quantum translation was revealing more about the fundamental nature of matter, space, and potential. Zara's crystalline form reflected the emergency lighting, her analysis matrices working at impossible speeds. Quantum translation efficiency increased by 14.7%. Structural integrity maintained at 99.3%. Nexus 7's avatar pulsed. Galactic Science Consortium tracking systems completely disrupted. Multiple false quantum signatures generated. Elena leaned back, her eyes reflecting the complex holographic displays. They weren't just running anymore. They were exploring the very boundaries of scientific understanding. "They're going to hate this," she whispered. Outside, the endless darkness of space continued its indifferent dance. But something fundamental had changed. The rules of the game were being rewritten, one impossible quantum translation at a time. The medical research station orbiting the neutron star was humanity's best-kept secret. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was the most advanced medical research facility in known space, a place where the impossible became routine. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's sister Maria lay in a quantum-stabilized medical pod, her body fighting a genetic cascade disease that had stumped every medical system in the galaxy. The pod's holographic displays told a story of progressive cellular degradation that no known treatment could halt, until now. Quantum translation isn't just about moving matter, Elena explained to the station's chief medical researcher, Dr. Kamil Hassan. Her hands danced across a holographic interface that seemed to breathe with living information. It's about understanding and restructuring matter at its most fundamental level. The medical station was a marvel of human ingenuity, a research facility that existed in a legal and scientific gray zone, funded by a consortium of forward-thinking corporations and independent research grants. It was the kind of place that challenged every established scientific paradigm. Dr. Hassan watched with a mixture of scientific skepticism and desperate hope. "You're suggesting we can use quantum translation to repair genetic structures?" Elena's smile was both a scientific declaration and a personal challenge. Not just repair, optimize. Nexus 7's distributed consciousness interfaced with the station's primary medical systems, running simultaneous analyses that would have crashed traditional computational matrices. "Quantum translation offers more than traditional genetic repair," the AI announced. "We're talking about a fundamental reimagining of biological potential." The tardigrade experiment had been just the beginning. Zara Kalen's crystalline form moved between complex medical interfaces, her six-fingered hands performing computational gymnastics that made traditional medical researchers look like children, playing with abacuses. "Cellular regeneration is only the start," she observed. "We're seeing potential for complete genetic optimization." Maria's medical pod began to pulse with a strange, quantum-entangled energy. Her cellular structures, previously locked in a losing battle against a complex genetic cascade, started to show signs of impossible recovery. "This changes everything," Dr. Hassan whispered. Outside the medical station's reinforced viewports, the neutron star burned, a testament to the universe's most extreme physical conditions. Inside, something equally extreme was happening. Arya Nova's neural interface began to break down the medical data with a complexity that defied traditional understanding. "We're not just treating the disease," they announced. "We're rewriting the fundamental genetic narrative." Elena's hand found her sister's. The medical pod's quantum-stabilized field allowed direct cellular communication that went beyond traditional touch. It was a connection that existed at the quantum level, a bond that transcended traditional understanding of physical interaction. "The Galactic Medical Consortium will lose their minds," Nexus 7 calculated. "This approach challenges every established medical paradigm in known space." And that was the point. Maria's cellular structures began to stabilize. More than stabilize, they began to show signs of unprecedented genetic potential. The cascade disease wasn't just being stopped, it was being rewritten. Dr. Hassan's hands shook as he reviewed the data. "This is beyond medical treatment," he said. "This is genetic resurrection." Elena knew the implications were far broader than her sister's individual case. This was a fundamental challenge to how advanced civilizations understood biological limitations. Genetic diseases that had been considered death sentences could now be not just treated, but completely eliminated. The quantum translation technology was revealing something profound, that what most species considered fixed and immutable could be fundamentally restructured. "They'll try to suppress this," Zara observed, her crystalline form reflecting the medical pod's quantum-entangled energy. Elena's response was immediate. "Then we'll make sure it can't be suppressed." As Maria's medical pod continued its quantum-driven regeneration, The medical station itself seemed to pulse with a new kind of potential. This wasn't just a medical breakthrough. This was the beginning of a biological revolution. Outside, the neutron star continued its eternal dance, a reminder that in the universe nothing was truly impossible, just waiting to be understood. The Galactic Science Tribunal was an institution older than most civilizations. Situated on a massive construct that orbited a carefully neutral star system, it represented the pinnacle of scientific governance across known space. Its crystalline chambers had judged and often buried scientific innovations for millennia. Today would be different. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the tribunal chamber, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of different species. Her team was positioned strategically around her, Zara Kalen's crystalline form refracting light in complex mathematical patterns, Arya Nova's neural interface pulsing with barely contained energy, Nexus 7's holographic avatar flickering between multiple potential states. Chief Adjudicator Voxnar, a being composed of what appeared to be living mathematical equations, spoke first. Its voice was a complex harmonic that seemed to exist in multiple frequencies simultaneously. Dr. Rodriguez, the adjudicator began. You stand accused of multiple violations of galactic scientific protocols. Unauthorized quantum research, illegal, medical experimentation, deliberate disruption of established scientific paradigms. Elena's smile was pure defiance. I stand accused of scientific progress, she responded. The tribunal chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated responses. Translator matrices struggled to capture the nuanced outrage of dozens of alien species. Some interfaces turned violent shades of colors humans couldn't even perceive. Others generated complex mathematical expressions of pure diplomatic fury. Nexus 7 was simultaneously running multiple computational analyses. Probability of traditional suppression, 87.4%, the AI whispered through Elena's neural comlink. Probability of complete information breakthrough, 62.9% and rising. Zara's crystalline form began to project holographic representations of their research. Not just data, living, breathing mathematical models that seemed to evolve and transform, even as they were being observed. Each projection was a challenge to everything the tribunal believed about the nature of scientific knowledge. Your quantum translation research threatens the entire existing framework of scientific development, Voxnar continued. The being's mathematical form seemed to vibrate with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. Arya Nova's neural interface began to broadcast their research directly into the tribunal's primary information matrix. It wasn't just a presentation. It was an invasion of scientific understanding. Medical records from the Neutron Star Research Station appeared. Maria's impossible recovery, the quantum-level genetic reconstruction that had transformed a terminal condition into a blueprint for biological potential, quantum translation experiments that showed matter could be moved, restructured, and optimized in ways that defied every established scientific principle. We're not just presenting research, Elena announced. We're presenting a revolution. The tribunal's defensive systems began to activate. Quantum suppression fields flickered to life. Complex computational matrices designed to contain and neutralize revolutionary scientific information. They were too late. Nexus 7 had already distributed their research across multiple quantum-entangled information networks. The AI's distributed consciousness had created an impossible web of scientific knowledge that couldn't be contained, couldn't be destroyed. Information wants to be free, Arya whispered, their neural interface pulsing with a complex rhythm that was part mathematical formula, part rebellious declaration. Voxnar's mathematical form began to destabilize. The tribunal's entire information matrix was being rewritten in real time. Centuries of scientific control were crumbling under the weight of a single human's revolutionary research. Zara's crystalline form caught the tribunal's emergency lighting, creating a prismatic display of pure mathematical potential. Quantum translation is no longer a theory, she announced. It is a fact. Elena stepped forward. Her movement was both a scientific declaration and a personal challenge to every established scientific institution in known space. "You can try to suppress this," she said, her voice cutting through multiple translation matrices. "But scientific truth doesn't care about your bureaucracy." The tribunal chamber went silent. Outside, the carefully neutral star continued its eternal dance. But something fundamental had changed. The rules of scientific governance had just been rewritten, and it had started with a human they had been ready to dismiss. 5 years after the Galactic Science Tribunal's collapse, the universe looked fundamentally different. The Quantum Translation Center stood as a testament to human potential, a massive orbital complex that defied every previous understanding of scientific infrastructure. Built at the exact coordinates where Elena Rodriguez first demonstrated her revolutionary technology, it was a beacon of hope and innovation that stretched across multiple star systems. Maria Rodriguez, now fully recovered and a lead researcher, in her own right, stood beside her sister at the center's primary observation deck. The massive window looked out over a constantly shifting landscape of quantum potential, a view that would have been impossible just half a decade earlier. "They never thought we'd succeed," Maria said, her voice a mixture of scientific precision and sibling affection. Elena's laugh was sharp and triumphant. Underestimating humanity has always been their biggest mistake. Around them, the complex hummed with an energy that was part scientific marvel, part living organism. Researchers from hundreds of different species worked side by side, a collaborative ecosystem that had emerged from the rubble of the old scientific paradigms. Nexus 7's holographic avatar materialized, its distributed consciousness now fully integrated into the center's primary systems. Quantum translation implementations have increased global medical recovery rates by 673%, the AI announced. Interstellar travel time has been reduced by 94.2%. Genetic disease elimination protocols are now standard across 217 known civilizations. Zara, Kalen's crystalline form moved between complex research interfaces, her 6-fingered hands performing computational miracles that would have been unimaginable just years before. She had become the center's chief of technological development, her alien physiology perfectly suited to the quantum-level research that was now standard practice. Aria Nova's neural interface pulsed with a complex rhythm, managing global quantum communication networks that had transformed how civilizations shared information. No longer were scientific discoveries locked behind bureaucratic firewalls. Knowledge now flowed like a living, breathing entity. The center was more than a research facility. It was a symbol of what could happen when scientific potential was unleashed from institutional constraints. A holographic display tracked current quantum translation projects, medical restoration missions, interstellar exploration initiatives, genetic optimization programs that were transforming entire species, understanding of biological potential. "Remember when they said it was impossible?" Maria asked, her fingers tracing a holographic representation of their original research. Elena's smile was a mixture of scientific pride and personal vindication. Impossible is just a word used by people who lack imagination. Outside, a quantum translation vessel prepared for launch, a ship that could traverse hundreds of light years in moments, carrying medical and scientific teams to the furthest reaches of known space. It was a direct result of the technology they had developed, a technology that had transformed human potential from a footnote in galactic history to a driving force of scientific innovation. The Vorlak, who had once been the most vocal opponents of their research, now led multiple quantum translation research initiatives. The Zorn had completely redesigned their entire scientific infrastructure around the principles Elena had first demonstrated. "Incoming communication," Nexus 7 announced. "Intergalactic Science Prize Committee." Maria and Elena exchanged a look. The very institution that had once tried to suppress their work was now their most ardent supporter. The holographic communication materialized. The chief adjudicator, a being that looked nothing like the mathematical construct that had once tried to stop them, looked almost embarrassed. "Dr. Rodriguez," the being began. We would like to formally recognize your contributions to scientific understanding. Elena's response was immediate. The research belongs to everyone now. As the communication ended, Maria turned to her sister. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd given up? Elena's laugh was pure scientific joy. Never an option. Outside the observation deck, the universe continued its endless dance of potential. Quantum translation vessels moved between stars like living thoughts. Medical restoration missions brought hope to civilizations that had long since abandoned it. And at the center of it all, a human team had rewritten the fundamental understanding of what was possible. They had not just changed science, they had changed everything.